All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're tackling a pretty big and honestly, a kind of unsettling idea from the source material we're looking at. And it's this. The English-speaking world, the Anglosphere, seems to be having a crisis of reality, a growing disconnect from what's actually happening. So we're going to break down how this is all taking shape from the way we're educated all the way to what happens in our own homes. In this quote, this really hits the nail on the head. The sense of just denial of reality, of what is actually ongoing. I mean, wow, it's pointing to this massive refusal to just see what's right in front of us. You see it in geopolitics, you see it in the media, maybe even in our own towns. And look, this isn't just about people having different opinions. The source is arguing it's something deeper, a real break from facts you can actually see and verify. Okay, so to really get our heads around this denial, we need a tool, a framework. And that framework has this big, clunky name, psychoepistemology. I know, it's a mouthful, right? But all it really means is, how do you decide what's true? What's your personal process for figuring stuff out? It's like the mental software we all run. And the argument here is that for a lot of people, that software is starting to glitch. Big time. So where does this all start? Where do we see the first signs of this breakdown? Well, according to the source material, it all begins with our kids. There's been this really dramatic shift in how young people's minds are developing and how they're even interacting with the world.
Just look at this comparison. It's pretty stark, isn't it? Think back. It wasn't that long ago that the intellectual peak for a kid, that really inquisitive, cheeky why stage, was around 12 to 14 years old. But now, the source material suggests that peak has been shoved all the way down to ages 9 to 11. And what's replacing it? A dependency on devices. Kids are just less empowered to ask those tough questions anymore.
And the main culprit here? Well, the source points a finger directly at screens. The idea is that they're not just some harmless distraction. They're actively dulling the brain, getting in the way of neurological development, and completely bypassing those traditional rites of passage. The moments where kids used to learn from real-world experiences and mentors. That crucial mind-body connection that you need for real deep learning, it's just getting cut. And that leads us to this quote, which is just perfect. They're all advising each other, and it's like the blind leading the blind. I mean, think about it. If you're not curious enough to go find a mentor, someone with actual experience, who do you turn to? Each other. And what you get is this cycle of inexperience, a total echo chamber where everybody's just repeating the same uninformed ideas back and forth. No real wisdom can ever get in. Yeah, and this table really breaks down that shift perfectly. We used to have this model of mentor-led learning, right? You'd learn from your elders, your parents, people who'd actually lived it. The goal was wisdom, experience. Now, it's all pure group dependency. The source for information is social media and other kids who don't know any more than you do. And what's the value there? Conformity, fitting in. The end result is we basically traded critical thinking for groupthink. Okay, but here's the thing. It's easy to blame smartphones, right? They're the obvious modern symptom. But the source material argues this problem goes way, way deeper. The seeds for this crisis were actually planted a long time ago, in the very foundation of our modern education system. So let's dig into that. Now, this is a pretty bold claim from the source. The argument is that our whole standardized schooling system, at least in the English-speaking world, has its roots in a colonial imperialist mindset. And its main purpose was never to teach kids how to think. Nope. It was to create a population that would just obey authority, no questions asked. And here's how that cycle of subservience supposedly works. First, you standardize everything, a rigid, one-size-fits-all curriculum. Step 2, you discourage logic. You make it all about memorizing facts, not about reasoning for yourself. Then, you teach them to appeal to authority, that the real truth comes from the system, from the government or the council, not from your own investigation. And what do you get at the end of all that? Citizens who are conditioned to follow rules without ever asking why. And of course, a mindset like that doesn't just stay locked up in the classroom. It bleeds out into our culture. It gets amplified a million times over by the media, and it ends up having these huge effects on how we see, well, everything, especially geopolitics. And that idea of just deferring to authority, it often gets reinforced at home too. The source points out that in some migrant communities, for example, cultural traditions might really value respecting elders over, say, challenging what they say. So when a kid asks a really tough question that a parent doesn't have an answer to, that curiosity can get shut down. It's seen as being defiant. And what does that teach the kid? That just asking the question is wrong. This anecdote from the source is it's so telling. You have a young person who goes to their imam and asks a question that's coming from a very real, human place. Why aren't we praying for the Palestinians? And what does the religious authority say? Oh, we don't do political. Just like that, the question gets shut down. It's a textbook example of an institution choosing dogma over confronting a really uncomfortable but very real situation. And then you see these exact same tactics used on a much bigger scale by media and governments. Language gets turned into a weapon. The source brings up the example of calling people refugees when maybe a more accurate term would be prisoners of war, since they're fleeing a country that just bombed them. You have movies that completely reframe historical events to look like something they weren't. It's basically an information war, and as they say, truth is always the first casualty. Okay, so after all that doom and gloom, you're probably asking, so what do we do, right? The problems feel so big, so systemic. But here's the hopeful part. The source makes a really powerful argument that the solution, it's personal. It starts with us. It starts at home. And really, this is the main takeaway. If we sit around waiting for the school system to fix itself, or for the media to suddenly change its tune, we're going to be waiting forever. The real power to turn the ship around is with parents, with families. It's in the conversations we decide to have, day in and day out. So here's the game plan, the actual actionable steps. First, talk about the news as a family. Don't just have it on in the background, really discuss it. Second, constantly challenge assumptions. Always be asking, why do you think that is? Third, and this one is huge, model humility. It is totally okay to say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Let's look it up together. That is so much more powerful than just shutting down a question because you're uncomfortable. It's an invitation to discover something together. And so we'll leave you with this final thought, this question to chew on. If we don't teach our children how to question reality, who's going to define it for them? Because it's not like there will be a vacuum. Someone will fill that space. It'll be the media. It'll be their peer groups. It'll be those very systems that are designed to create obedience. The choice is ours to make. But so are the consequences.